in Parsha's Vayero, just to tie this up. Look on page 332. So here, Moshe Rabbeinu gives. Now you have to really get focused here because we're going to look at a couple of. It's very subtle. Moshe Rabbeinu says to Paro, "Ki im eincha mishalech esam, if you don't send my people, hineni mashleach becha, you, uva your servants." Servants always means, by the way, when he talks about the servant, avadecha means the inner circle. Means the inner circle, the high official, the government officials. They're enough chumashim, guys. You don't have to share. They're enough chumashim to go around. Uve'amcha, and your nation, ubebatecha es ha'orov. I'm going to send the orov, which is the mixed multitude of animals. Umalu be'etay mitzrayim es ha'orov. The houses of Egypt are going to be filled with the wild animals. V'gam ha'adama asher hem aleh, and also the earth that they are on. Now, first of all, why does it say also the earth that they are on? I mean, obviously, if the animals are invading, it's going to be invading on the land that the Egyptians are on. Why does it say that? Games ha'adama asher hem aleha. That seems to be redundant. And the Mefarshim explained, Games ha'adama asher aleha is not referring to the earth that the Egyptians are on. It's referring to the land that the animals are on. Animals are more vicious in their own habitat. So according to the Mefarshim, not only the animals attacked, but the earth that the animal was on somehow was transported with them. An animal, when he's on his own habitat, is more confident, so that he is therefore going to become more vicious. So somehow, I mean, the whole thing's a miracle anyway, but the earth that they were on was transported so that the animals are in their vicious. Okay, that's one point. The question is, if you look at the order over here, the order doesn't seem to make sense, because it says, where would you expect Paro to be living? Would you expect him to live a house? A palace, okay, and he did live in a palace. But why is the palace, where is his palace? Is the palace going to be right on the border, right on the edge of the country? Or is the palace likely to be more inland where he's protected? You expect to be inland. So that what you have over here is you have an interesting phenomenon. I'm going to send the wild animals on you, and on your servants, your high officials, and on your nation. That means that the animals come running across the border, vicious animals, and they're going to run all the way inland first, and start eating inland and then working their way out. Does that make any sense? It doesn't make any sense. If animals come in and they start attacking, first thing they see, if they're hungry, they're going to start eating it. So that right there is a proof that this is a supernatural. It's not a natural occurrence that all of these wild animals come invading. Because if it was natural, then whatever is in their path, that's what they're going to start destroying or eating or biting. So why does it first they're going to come inland, then they're going to get to you, then they kind of work their way back towards the border, which makes absolutely no sense. And that's why you also find, if you turn back for a second, you find it by the frogs. Take a look at page 328. On 328, 8 lines from the top. So it says, you see where that is? Pasuk Chav Ches. Last 2 words on line. Vishoratz ha-yaor tzvardeim. The Yaor will, how did he say, what was the translation for Shoratz? It'll swarm with frogs. Ve'olu ubo b'veisecha. They'll enter your house, and then they'll attack your high officials, and your people. So you have, when it comes to the frogs, they have the same thing. It goes on inside outward. It sounds like you're going to go from inner outwards. So neither of them make sense, right? Except that the Mefarshim say that by the Arov, and later on we're going to see by the locust also. The locusts are going to attack from inside outside. Yet the Mefarshim say that by the Arov and the locust, that's a sign that it's supernatural. But by the frogs, it doesn't say that. It doesn't have an indication by the frogs that the fact they're going to get the Paro first is a sign that it's supernatural. What? By the frogs. The frogs, again, it's the same structure in all 3 places. In all 3 places, the structure is they're going to start with Paro, then the high officials, and then the common people. Now what that means is, geographically, that means it's going to start from the inside out, because we would expect that Paro is not living on the border. A king does not live on the border. To the contrary, he lives in a protected area. So, but yet the Mefarshim say that by the Arov and by the locust, which is going to be this week's Parsha, we'll see in a second, that's a sign that it's supernatural. But it doesn't say that by the frogs. The fact that they attacked Paro first doesn't say that by the frogs. My question to you is, why not? Why not? You hear the question. You hear the problem. The answer lies in the fact, what was the source? Where did they come from? Where did they come from? The wild animals came across the border. The locusts come flying in from across the border. Where did the frogs come from? They came from the Nile. The Nile, Paro did live by the Nile. The Nile wasn't the border. He lived by that. Not only that, you see earlier when Paro's daughter, it doesn't say she went to the Nile. What does it say? She went down to the Nile. And according to the Medrash, they were living right down from and Paro himself, every morning he went out to the Nile by himself to relieve himself. What that means is that Paro himself his house was right by the Nile. He always lived by the river. That's the best real estate, is right by the water. That doesn't mean it wasn't by the border. So by the frogs, it's only natural. The frogs are going to attack Paro first, because they came from the Nile, so the first thing they're going to run into is Paro. Then they're going to run into his high officials who live closer. Then they're going to hit the people who live farther out. The best real estate is always by the water, isn't it? Unless you live by Seagate during Hurricane Sandy. I know a guy. A guy in the other yeshiva who lived. His grandparents live in Seagate. They were the third house from the ocean. The second house from the ocean is now in the ocean. It actually floated out to the ocean during his grandparents' house also suffered a tremendous amount of damage. So Paro by the frogs, it's a natural occurrence. But when wild animals, they don't go running past and also start their way inward like as if it's been planned in advance. And that's what shows that it's supernatural. Question. Somebody had a question. Yeah, you hit a good.
Paro and the Egyptians worshipped the Nile as a god, and why was he relieving himself on his god?
It's an interesting question. They worship it, but it's multiple uses. That was one of the uses. As a matter of fact, do you know that there was, now that you brung it up, do you know that there was an idol called the Baal, the worship of the Baal? And one of the ways that they worshiped this was called an avodah zarah. And the way they worshipped it was by relieving themselves in front of the idol. That's how they worshipped it. And the Gemara says that there was a Jewish guy who decided one day that he's going to show disrespect to this idol. So he stopped and he went in and he relieved himself in front of the idol, and then he cleaned himself on the nose of the idol to disrespect it. And the priests of the idol then went wild. They said, wow, no one has ever worshipped with such devotion. That's what the Gemara says. That's what the Gemara says. And not only that, I'll get to you one second. There was a woman who was sick, and she said, and she went from one idol to another looking for medical relief. Maybe the gods will help her out. And when she got to the Baal, she said, how do you worship this idol? And they said, well, you drink a lot, you eat certain food, and you drink a lot of heavy beer, and then you relieve yourself in front of the idol. This was a woman, and she said, listen, I'll be sick. I'd rather be sick than and the last thing I'm going to do is do that in front of an idol. I'll take the disease as opposed to doing that. So there was a form of the fact that they worship the Nile. That doesn't mean that they in India today they worship cows. It doesn't mean that they don't see what the cows do. What the cows leave deposits all over the place. I don't know how they worship that. But so the Nile, that was for practical purposes. There was nowhere else to go. Yeah, question. Go ahead.
You talk about the source of the frogs, but I thought that the commentary said that the frogs also started inside, like the palace.
They got there. There is an opinion they came up through the earth. The Medrash says that they were underneath it, where they're blocked off. So they came up through the ground, through the marble floors broke open. But the Torah's source says, the Pesach says they came up from the Nile. So if they came from the Nile, so it's not supernatural. Whereas for the animals and the locust, we're going to see about the locusts now. Okay, page 340. Top of 340, Parsha's Bo. V'yomer Hashem al Moshe bo Paro, ki ani hichbadeti es libo. I've made his heart heavy. And you'll notice that the word hichbadeti, top line on 340, hichbadeti es libo. I've made his heart heavy. And the word hichbadeti is like the word kaved. Kaved is the Hebrew word for liver, is kaved. What happens the more you roast liver? What happens? The harder it gets. The more you cook it, the harder it gets with liver. I don't know if you guys eat chopped liver. You eat chopped liver? No, I don't think. Yeah.
Raw liver.
Huh?
Raw liver.
Now, what do you mean by that?
Like uncooked liver.
Yeah. What about it?
It's pretty good.
All right. Listen, he's a Philadelphia fan. Anything is possible. You're not telling me the truth, are you?
No, I am.
What raw liver?
Yeah.
Like steak tartare type of thing?
Pretty much, yeah.
No. Yeah. Really?
Yeah.
What? Yeah.
I'm saying, yeah, it's a health fad. Like, it's very popular right now to eat like cubes of liver because it's like very nutrient dense.
Nutrient dense meaning raw. Right? That's a fancy way of saying it. Really? Well, listen, to each his own. I like a burger. I'll take a burger and fries any day. But okay. So when you cook it though, what happens to it? It gets harder. The more you cook it, the harder it gets. Paro's heart is getting cooked. And the more, that's why Hichbadati, Hashem says, I made his heart heavy. I haven't had steak tartare, by the way, just saying. Hichbadati es libo, I've made his heart heavy. That means he's being cooked. And the more he's cooked, the harder his heart is getting, what do you call it? Ve'es leiv avodav, in the hearts of his leman shisi ososai ela b'kirbo, in order to put my signs in their midst. That means Paro at a certain point has lost his free choice. After the first five plagues, he's lost his free choice. And Hashem says, and this is a way to put my signs in him, because there are going to be a few more signs coming. So this already started after the fifth plague. Now there are commentaries that say that as each plague came, the Egyptians, what does it mean? If you notice the wording, it's an interesting turn of phrase. In order to put my signs, how does the Art Scroll translate it? In his midst. Bikirbo. The signs, which are the plagues, go in his midst. So there are commentaries that say that what that refers to is that as each plague came, the Egyptians were branded with the name of that plague. How do you like that? So not only you got Svardeim, now it's branded across your chest. Right? The word Svardeia is branded across your chest. Dennis Rodman would probably be jealous. Right? And then as each plague comes, it's like tattooed on you, but it's kind of branded. I imagine that didn't feel so good either. What's that? Bikir Bo, according to the Mepharshim, all the Egyptians. He has the plague. They all suffered the plague, and they all got branded too. Right? Yeah, I hate when that happens. So that's as far as the kibbutz. Now listen carefully, because we have a pretty much a foundational idea in Judaism here. And then God says, look at the next one. Uleman tesaper be'oznei vincha uven bincha. You should tell your children and your grandchildren, Eis asher hisalalti b'mitzrayim, how I mocked the Egyptians. Ve'es ososai asher samti bum, and the signs that I embedded in them. V'yadatem ki ani Hashem, and you'll know that I am God. So there are several points here that we need to understand. First of all, what's the mockery over here? What does it mean that you'll tell your children, tell your descendants how I mocked the Egyptians? I wouldn't call a guy that you give him 10 forms of severe pain. Would you use the word you're mocking him? I would say you're torturing him. You're not mocking him. Why is it called mocking? Why is it called that I've mocked them, I've laughed at them, as opposed to I've tell your children how I tortured them, how I, what's another word for torture? I've inflicted pain on them. Why do you use the turn of phrase, hisalalti means I've laughed at them, I've mocked them. How's the article translate? A mockery. I made a mockery of Egypt. So there's a medrash that says there's a guy who sends his servant out to the marketplace. He says to the servant, I want you to buy me a fish. The master sends the servant out and says, buy me a fish. So he goes out and he buys him a fish. And he comes back and the fish is rotten. So he says, okay, you got three choices. You could either eat the fish, eat the rotten fish, kind of like raw liver, eat the rotten fish, or take 100 lashes, or pay me 100 gold pieces as a fine. So the guy thinks, none of the choices are great. But, of the three choices, I guess I'll eat the fish. So he starts eating this rotten fish, and halfway through, he can't handle it. He says, forget it, I better take the lashes. So he starts smacking him, and halfway through, he says, I can't take any more. So he says, here, better take the 100 gold pieces. So what happened to this guy? Instead of just giving him the gold pieces right away, what else did he go through? He ate the half of a rotten fish, and he got 50 lashes which served no good purpose, and in the end, he gave the gold pieces anyway. So what happened to the Egyptians? You had a choice. You could have sent out the Jewish people. Instead, you went through this pain, and you went through more pain, and you sent out the Jewish people, and you gave them the possessions, because the Jewish people are going to leave with a lot of gold. That's the mockery. The mockery is that it went out anyway. That you went through needless pain. That's the mockery that we're going to tell our people, number one. Number two, the Chassam Sofer says over here, now listen, because this is a very interesting insight in human nature. Imagine a guy says, imagine you smoke cigarettes, right? Let's say you smoke cigarettes. Or you have a bad habit, like you eat raw liver, right? And I say, we're not going to get past this so quick, Okay, let's say a guy smokes cigarettes. And I say to you, hey, why don't you quit smoking? He says, I could quit anytime I want. I say, no, you can't. You haven't got enough willpower. Now you're in a catch-22. What are you going to do? You won't quit? Then now you've got a reputation that you don't have willpower. You will quit just to make a point, but now you're depriving yourself of whatever the pleasure was. See, either way you're caught. It's a catch-22. Either way you lose. Either way you lose. If you do it, this is classic Gemara, I got you in a pickle here. If you don't quit, so there goes you got a reputation now of not having any willpower. You're a wimp. And if you do quit, just to make a point, but now you're depriving yourself of pleasure. That's I've made a mockery of you. I've caught you and it's a mockery. So what does Hashem tell Moshe? Look at this again, it's very funny. Hashem says to Moshe, come to Paro, because I've hardened his heart. Tell Paro, Rashi says, tell Paro, warn him. And the Mefarshim say, you're going to tell Paro, Hashem has hardened your heart. No, he hasn't. Oh, yeah? How can you? Yes, he has. No, he hasn't. Oh, yeah? Then send out the Jewish people. No, I don't want to. He's hardened your heart. He's taking. You don't have any choice here. I do have a choice, but I don't want to. No. If you don't, that means you can't. That means Paro's law. He's caught over here. What's he going to do? He's not going to. He'll send out the Jewish people to make a point. So you've lost the Jewish people. You won't send them out. You can't do it even if you want. I could do it. No, you can't. If you can, you would. You're selfish. You're not giving me your chocolate bar. I'm not selfish. I just don't want to give you. You're selfish. Okay, here. You notice an older brother speaking. So what we used to do, we did this in high school. I go up to a guy and say, if you let me draw 3 lines on your arm, I'll give you a quarter. There are actually guys who went for this. If you let me throw out 3 lines? Yeah, 3 lines right on your arm with a pen. I'll give you a quarter. I said, okay. Draw 1 line, draw a second line. Forget it. You walk away. I said, no, he's got the 2 lines on his arm. Yeah. Well, it was done to me, therefore I did to others. So that's the mockery. Now, watch this, because this is a fundamental idea. Look at the Pasuk Beis very carefully, gentlemen. Do you see a problem? Do you see a problem in Pasuk Beis? There's a problem in Pasuk Beis' grammatical structure. It starts out in the singular. It says, Uleman tesaper. Saper is singular. That you will tell over to your sons and your grandsons how I mocked the Egyptians. And then the end of the pasuk says, V'yedatem, plural, ki ani Hashem. You'll know that I am Hashem. Why does it start with the singular and it goes to the plural? It starts out, you will tell over, and then it goes in the, first of all, that's question number one. Question number two, why is it in the singular at all? I mean, you're talking to the Jewish people. Why is it in the singular? This is something that's expected of everybody. What do you say, Cab?
It's because when it's singular, it's first just going to affect you, and then when it's plural, it's also going to affect your kids, like the mockery.
Very close. Very good. Very good. Very close. That means like this. Every father has to tell it over. You have to tell it over kids. At the Pesach Seder, we say over the Haggadah. The Haggadah, the story of Egypt, this basic story, the halacha is, if two of the Gedolei Ador are sitting together, they're having a Pesach Seder. Two Torah scholars are having a Pesach Seder. They're alone on an island, and they have matzah with them on the island. They're stranded on it, and they have a Pesach Seder. They have to say over Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, the story of having left Egypt. Once upon there was a man named Moshe, and he warned Paro. They go right through the story, and which is what you're supposed to do at the Pesach Seder, by the way, is just tell over the basic story. Who is going to benefit from that? V'yedatem ki ani Hashem. Not only your kids are going to benefit, you, the one who's giving it over and saying it over, you are going to reinforce it in your own consciousness. And therefore it's talking to each individual father should say it over to his sons, but you yourself are going to benefit. Now, there's a famous question about the accuracy of Torah transmission. Everybody's wondered about this. How do you know that this is also accurate? You know, I mean, we got a lot of laws over here, and it's been going on for a long time. I mean, how do you know something hasn't been lost across the generations? One of the answers is, there are different approaches here. One of the approaches, what does it mean to tell it over to your sons? Is Torah given over? I told you, how old were you? How old were you when you knew what to do at a red light and what to do at a green light? How old were you when you figured that out? 2, sitting in the back of your father's car, making him crazy because every time he came to green light, go. Red light, stop. Helping him out, right? Yellow light, daddy, go. Mommy, stop. Right? You're a precocious youngster, you noticed. So how old were you when you learned that you have to say thank you when somebody gives you something? You weren't that old because your parents told you, but you lived it. Every time something, you say thank you, and you actually had to go through the motions. Yeah, we have to tell over the story. But Judaism itself is not something that's being whispered in an ear. Judaism is being lived. It's being lived generation to generation throughout thousands and thousands of homes. This last Friday night, in thousands of homes, they had basically the same ceremony. Somebody got up, they came back from shul, sang about angels, praised the wife, somebody got up with a cup of wine and said, we're better than everybody else in the world. God has chosen us. And then you sat down and I wasn't even with you on jobs, I could predict your menu, gentlemen. You probably had some sort of bread that you started out with, which you ate more of than you should have. Then you dipped it in something. You had some sort of fish, either salmon or gefilte fish, if you were brave enough. Right? The salmon I could handle. The gefilte fish, you're on your own. You then had some sort of chicken soup, maybe a vegetable soup, but usually a chicken soup. Then you had some roast chicken, maybe some meat as well. But there was no sushi. I don't think, right? Maybe Shabbos day, right? Friday, right? Why? We've lived it. Then you sang, maybe a Sephardi tune if you were with Sephardis, if you were with Ashkenazis, but everybody got together and sang. I guarantee everybody was well dressed at the table. How do I know? Because it's happened in all thousands of homes for hundreds of generations. This is what's been going on. That's the man tesaper b'oznei bincha v'edcha. And then you yourself reinforce it in yourself. By going through it, we reinforce it. It's not just verbal saying it over, number one. Number two is another question here. Anything bother you about that expression? Leman tesaper b'oznei bincha uven bincha. You should tell it over to your son and your grandson. Anything bother you about that expression? Anything you find peculiar about that?
not your responsibility to tell your grandson. It's your son's responsibility.
Of course, very good. In other words, if every father tells his son, so every father's going to tell his son, how did the grandfather get to the grandson? So first of all, it is your responsibility. The Gemara says that how far is your responsibility to teach Torah to your children? How many generations does it extend? The Gemara says it extends to your grandchildren. A grandfather has to teach his grandchildren as well. Not only that, a grandchild receiving it from his grandfather, the Gemara says, is as if he received it from Har Sinai. What you learned from your grandfather is as if you learned if you received the Torah on Har Sinai. Why is that? Why is that? The answer is, sometimes what you learn from your grandfather is more impactful. Because when you're learning from your father, especially if it's academics, sometimes, especially kids in school, when you learn with the father, sometimes the father's nervous because he wants you to have good grades, and the kid has to learn it because he's intimidated by the father. It's not like learning with your grandfather. When you learn with your grandfather, it's sweeter. Often what you learn with your grandfather, I remember what I learned with my grandfather, both grandfathers, I could do no wrong. With Zadie, I could do no wrong. With my parents, I could do no right. With my grandparents, I could do no wrong. And it comes across different. The grandfather is that sort of thing. With fathers also, it's got to be. That's why the Torah says, teach it over to your kids, to your son and your grandson. That means communicate the entire Yiddishkeit to your sons in a way they'll want to give it over to their grandsons. L'man tisaper bazne bincha, tell it to your sons, uben bincha, and make sure that he wants to tell it to his sons. How's that going to happen? It's only going to happen if you communicate it to your family in a pleasant way. If it's pleasant, if it's enjoyable, they're going to communicate it on to the next generation in an enjoyable way. If they suffered with your Yiddishkeit because you were too tough in the house and you were too critical of them every time he didn't bench and every time he didn't make a bracha, you gave it to him over, so then you're turning him away from Yiddishkeit. It's a long-term process. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And it's got to be communicated that way. Okay, let's go on. Moshe comes to Paro. And they come in, and he says, okay, send away the Jewish people, or you're going to get hit with arbe. Take a look at Pesach Dalet. Moshe, can I trouble you open that door so we get some airflow? You know, really, raw liver? I never heard of that. I know people grind up meat, like hamburger, they eat raw hamburger meat, right? That can be pretty good with it. Yeah.
Not even ground liver. It's like full liver. That's just.
But isn't it treif? Because the liver's filled with blood.
If you salt it.
If you salt, well, no, you can't salt liver. You gotta roast it out. He means it's been roasted out. He means after it's been roasted over an open fire. That's what he means by raw liver. That's
Cook it too.
huh?
Barely, you can still barely cook it too.
Yeah, you have to roast it out. You roast it out.
Not really raw.
Liver can't be, but that's what he means. He means that it's been roasted and koshered, and then he eats it. That's what he means. And I call that raw liver. 'Cause I don't eat that either. I don't even eat chopped liver. I don't eat chopped liver made on Shabbos. Like, what do you call it? The Jewish chopped liver. I won't touch liver in any shape. That's what he means. That's raw liver. Let's go on. Anybody for some baked chicken, you know? Oof. I did have a good dip on Shabbos, though. I had something called it's mayonnaise with hot peppers in it. I forgot what it's called. What's it called?
Jalapeno?
Jalapeno. Yeah, that was really good. Yeah, my daughter-in-law made it. That was really good, and it wasn't raw. It was really good. Okay. So here, Moshe Rabbeinu Pasuk Dalet, he says, Ki imayin atala shaleches. I mean, if you refuse to send my nation, hineni mevi mochar arbe bigvulecha. I'm going to bring locusts. Now look at the word arbe. What does the word arbe even remind you of? What Hebrew word does it remind you of? Arbe. What? Harbe, which is a lot. There's no accident. Arbe, it comes from the Hebrew word harbe, arbe. Arbe means to increase. When locusts come, they come in the millions, right? They just come in. Locusts, when locusts invade a field, what happens? They shave it. They shave it down. Look at the chisa es ein haaretz. They'll cover the view of the earth. That means there are going to be so many of them. When locusts come, apparently it gets dark. because they're blocking out the sun, and that's exactly what the Torah says. This locust is going to come. The chisa es eina arts is going to cover literally the eye of the earth, meaning the view of the earth. V'lo yuchal liros es haaretz. He won't be able to see the earth. That means people won't be able to see, and some say the locusts themselves won't be able to see. The upper level layer won't be. There's so many locusts that some of the locusts will be blocked off. The achal is yeser hapleta nishar minabar. It's going to eat whatever left from the sun, from the hail. The achal is kol ha'etzat zomer lechem en minasada. So last week's parsha there was the hail came down, and the hail destroyed just about everything except the soft crops. The soft crops managed to survive the hail. Now the arba is going to come in, and the arba is going to clean it out. And it's terrifying because the farmer, a farmer's greatest fear is locust. I don't know if it's greatest fear, but it's a big fear. That the locust is going to come in and locusts will shave down your field, and they can take all the work that you put in your crops. Locusts come in. How long does it take? Minutes. They come in like it's like a haircut. I don't know if you're aware of the Hasidim. You know, when you go to the barber shop, you ask for a number. They can give you a number 2 haircut, a number 1 haircut, or a 0. They even have something called FSFS, 00. They have a 00 haircut where they just leave the payas. That's what the locusts look like. Excuse me 1 second, gentlemen, while I take care of my... Go ahead, you can look at the part. I just got to blow my nose. I can't do that in public.
We should have paused it, but whatever. I'll just let them know that there was a...
I think they'd know if they were watching.
I don't know, do they actually watch over?
I made it through. This is my first cold of the winter. I made it through did pretty good. I got it to this point. I finally got my first cold of the winter. I haven't had a cold. First cold. I wonder where I got it, Cab. Where'd I catch it from? Where's Sackstein? Did Sackstein leave? Okay. Okay, so these locusts are going to come in. And again, in the next pasuk, you see what we were talking about earlier, the order. They're going to fill your house, umalu batecha, uvate kol avadecha, pasuk vav, uvate kol mitzrayim. They're going to fill the houses in the opposite order, considering it coming in over the border. Again, they're going to start with Paro and work their way outwards. Now, this is absolutely terrifying. So the servants of Paro come to him and they say, all right, how long is this going to go on? So Paro says, he brings back Moshe Rabbeinu, and then on page 342, look at this conversation. Starting at the bottom of page 340. Vayushav es Moshe ves Aaron al Paro. Moshe and Aaron are brought back to Paro. Vayomer aleim. Now this is so far the best he's done. L'chu ivdu es Hashem Elokechem. Go serve Hashem your God. Miva mi haholchim. Now tell me exactly who's going. So he's already a little bit of a compromise. Vayomer Moshe binareinu vizkenenu nelech. Our young boys who are capable and our older men, we're going to go. Bivonenu vivnosenu, our sons and our daughters. Bitzonenu v'kareinu nerech, our flock. Ki chag Hashem lanu, because we're going to celebrate. So Paro says he turns facetious. Vayomer aleim yichein Hashem imachem kasher shalach eschem v'estachem. Oh, sure, I'm going to send you and your children. Re'u ki ra neged. I say you have evil intentions. Lochein. Lechuna hagvorim ve'ivdu es Hashem. The men could go. Ki osa atem mivakshim. That's what you really want. Vayigorish osa me'is pnei Paro. He chases them out. What's Paro's problem here? What's bothering Paro? What's bothering Paro? Moshe Rabbeinu says, okay, who's going? He says, we're all young and get old. Boys and girls, we're all young and get old. Paro says, oh, forget about it. You want to go? The men could go, because that's what you really want. What's bothering Paro? What's Paro's issue over here? What do you say?
There's two issues. One is that he thinks Moses was deceitful.
Why?
Because he said, let us go and worship. He thought it was like a quick vacate, like a religious retreat.
Okay.
And then
What else?
the second issue is that then he loses his workforce.
Okay. That's all is true. Yeah, your name is?
David,
David, yeah, go ahead. What's the problem?
they're just going to not come back.
Okay, that's what we say. That's true. He's worried that they're going to leave and not come back. And, you're taking everybody out, so maybe just the men will go. If the men go, then they will come back. That's 100% true. You're both right. But there's something else Paro is bothered by here. No work's going to be done. That's, that always bothered my wife. That's true. Some people, when they find a job, that's when they stop working. There's something else bothering Paro here. Something fundamental.
They'll be too disturbed. They'll be too busy with the kids.
That's true, but there's something. Money is always an issue. Money's always the issue. There's always money. It's true because there won't be work being done, and they're going to lose their commerce. That's all true. There's something fundamental here that's bothering Paro, which is a big difference between the us, and the various thems. You ever been to Hasidic shul on Shabbos? You ever daven with the Hasidim on Shabbos? How's the decorum? Okay. Are the kids there? Are the kids in shul? No kids in shul. Huh. Oh, which shul you daven at? Yeah. Ever kids in your shul? Ever see? Are there from kids in shul? Yeah. Are there a lot of kids in church? Yeah, right. Hopefully we never. Yeah, that was a loaded question. Yeah. Oh, not my church. Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you think? What does a church look like? I mean, we've seen pictures of churches other than in Dallas where you shoot a guy who comes in, but what do churches look? What's the decorum in a church usually? What do you picture? Kind of everybody's kind of sitting there, well be it. What does shul look like? There's a little bit of activity. There's a little bit of action, and you'll notice that in the frum world, little children are very involved in all the religious service. In the non-Jewish world, who's involved in the religious service? You have a select handful of people who are priests, or they're the guys. You don't have. Where are the kids? What's the kids' role over here? In Judaism, when you have a Pesach Seder, who's the star? Who's the main attraction at the Pesach Seder? It's for the kids. And when you build a sukkah, who's helping you build a sukkah? And who's helping you with the putting up decorations? And who's in? There's a lot of child focus in Judaism. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, we're going out to worship God. How are you going to worship God? Well, our young and our old, our children. Oh, give me a break. Who worships like that? And in Judaism, it's not uncommon that a father is in shul, and he's davening, and you have to stop in the middle of your Shemona Esrei, or you can't even make it to shul because you got to stay home and help with the kids. Or you say Shema with your kids at night before they go to sleep. And you spend a lot of time teaching your kids and going over at the Shabbos table, reviewing what they studied in school. Their Shabbos table. How many parents are sitting at a Christmas dinner reviewing their math homework with their kids? In Judaism, it's all about the kids. And your father is at the Shabbos table, and you get up, and there's a lot of kid tumult over here. That's part of the service of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. That's part of how we serve. We're serving with our children. That's foreign to Paro. Paro says, you're telling me you want to go serve your God. What's it got to do with your boys, your sons, and your daughters? What's that got to do with it? And our reaction is that's got everything to do with it, because that's Judaism. Judaism is focusing on the next. We have to take care of ourselves, obviously. But there's a lot of focus on the next generation. And Paro cannot wrap his head around there. What's that got to do? Therefore, you're not going. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings in, Pharaoh refuses, and the Arbe comes in, and they clean the place out. And Pharaoh, at that point, becomes a little more reasonable. He calls Moshe Rabbeinu, and he says, Dovid, get this out of here. Then Hashem says to Moshe, okay, now there's going to be darkness. Of all the plagues, I don't know about as far as suffering levels, but it's certainly the most intriguing, right? It's the neatest one. Darkness is really neat. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, there's going to be choshech. Take a look at page 344. Vayomer Hashem al Moshe, Neteyes yodcha al hashamayim, v'hi choshech al eretz Mitzrayim, v'yamesh choshech. There's going to be a thick darkness. Gentlemen, did any of you ever get caught in a blackout? Have you ever been in a blackout? Well, where you're from, it's most of the day. Right? You know when you have electricity 3 hours, 6 hours a day there.
Sometimes like 8 hours, 10 hours, they catch you.
I know that there are Jews in South Africa who have actually bought, what do you call it? They bought, huh?
Solar panels.
Yeah, and they brought and water also. There's water shortage there too.
To buy a ginger tank because the water keeps going.
The water keeps going. You're doing good over there. So if you ever been in a dark room, so sometimes in Israel we get in our neighborhood, everyone's there just a blackout. Usually in summer when all the air conditioners are, all of a sudden there's a blackout. It's very disconcerting. When you're caught in the dark. You ever been caught in the dark with a blackout? Sometimes people like on the subway, and also boom, it's blackout. And it's completely dark. It's pitch black. Even when I walk out on the street, sometimes the electric lights on the street lights are out. And it's dark. It's like, and then you're thinking like, wow, if I really was a burglar, I could do a good job right now. It's dark. Now, if it's ever pitch black, I think they have a place in Israel, by the way. There's a museum for the blind people. Have you ever? I've never done that. I'm intrigued by that. Have you done it?
Yeah, I've done it.
What's it like?
It was insane. I love it.
It's insane. Okay, insane is not a recognized word for people more than 22 years old. So we need an elaboration on what you mean by insane. It was like, this salad is insane. The salad was fine. Whether they didn't do anything strange. Yeah. What was the experience of the darkness?
No, so they turned Lazarus completely pitch black, and they kind of take you through
How do you feel while it's happening?
I don't know. I was very confused.
You're very confused. It was insane.
Disorienting.
Disoriented. Okay.
And also no sense of time.
While you're in the dark. So a guy told me once, a guy who was a bicycle rider, he told me that when you ride into a guy like one of these amateur, professional, whatever, there's a lot of bicycle riding, and he told me that when you go into a tunnel, and as you get into the tunnel, all of a sudden it gets pitch black in a tunnel, you lose your balance on the bicycle. You lose your sense of balance if it's pitch black. I mean, I wouldn't be riding in the pitch black myself. I wouldn't be riding a bicycle in the pitch black. But apparently, once you're surrounded by the darkness, you lose all sense of balance, which is very interesting. Gehenna is described as darkness. The darkness of Mitzrayim, the Medrash says, this was a darkness that was brought from Gehenna. What does that mean? Why? You think of Gehenna, you think of fires, right? When you think of Gehenna, you think of fire. By the way, there are many different levels of Gehenna. It's bad. And there are giant scorpions, the Medrash says, in Gehenna that get you. Not us, those who are in Gehenna. And there are many different levels and many different forms of suffering. One of them is darkness. Pitch black. Why? Part of the idea is darkness, night, always. First of all, it just isn't there a hormone that kicks in at night, and it makes you tired, but also you get kind of it's depressing, and when you're in the dark, you're alone with yourself, and for many people, that's the worst form of Gehenna, is to be alone with themselves, and a person is in the dark. Now here, the Egyptians are in the dark. And not only they're in the dark, the first 3 days are regular darkness, thick regular dark. The second days, it becomes more a tangible darkness. Think of black marshmallow fluff. And they couldn't stand up and they couldn't sit down. You could not shift positions for 3 days. You're in complete darkness. You couldn't, thick darkness. If you were sitting, you couldn't stand. If you were standing, you couldn't sit. And this went on for another 3 days. In the meantime, Look at what it says. Pasuk Chav Gimel. Lo ra'u ishes achiv, you didn't see each other. That's Gehenna. You're alone, total alone in Gehenna. V'lo kamu ish mitachtav shloshes yamim. You couldn't get up, you couldn't stand up. Ulechol b'nei Yisrael haya or b'mojvosav. And the Jewish people had light. Now imagine this. You're Egyptians, you're stuck in the dark. And Chazal say, what were the Jewish people doing while this was happening? They were walking through the Egyptian homes, checking, opening drawer, looking for stuff. And then when they're ready to leave and they went to the Egyptian and said, hey, Waleed, I'd like that, you have that diamond necklace. No, I don't have one, man. Yeah. Second drawer from the right under the socks. There's a diamond necklace. Where do they see it? Now, imagine you're the Egyptians. You know how disconcerting that is? You're sitting there like this, pitch black, and all of a sudden you hear footsteps in your house. And also you hear Yiddish. You know, a drawer opens, and then some guy says, Feivel, come here, give a kick. Ooh, Ashay Nezach. You know, and they're talking, what are they saying? What are they doing? What's happening? And you're panic stricken. And then after 3 days you get up. Finally you're able to get up. You run to your drawer. Nobody took anything. That's strange. A blackout, and there was no looting. There's only potential looting. Can you imagine what happens in a blackout? You're terrified. A blackout's terrifying. And there was no looting, but you heard voices. I mean, this is tremendous suffering for the Egyptians. And it's going to cost them. Because in the end, the Jews are going to answer, okay, we'll see more of this tomorrow, Mitzvah.